in the last 100 years of neuroscience. It's a collection of studies on an area of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex. Most people have never heard of this brain area, including many neuroscientists. Talk to a neurosurgeon, they know where it is. When people really start to understand that the human brain is a magnificent machine and organ, but that it has limitations, and we can start to understand our own limitations, that it can take us just up to this point, but not further, and that we can rely on healthy collective thinking to get us over these divides. I think that's when we're finally going to evolve as a species. I really do. When we start being able to exit our own brain and our group think to be able to really come to solutions, because often we just think in terms of compromise and conflict, which are essential things to think about, but ultimately understanding the limits of our cognition and how emotion drives cognition is really how we're going to be able to evolve our beliefs about what's possible. And by the way, that's not meant to just be a bunch of aspirational word salad. That's like a real possibility if we can just have the self-reflection to understand we know certain things, we believe certain things, but that this neural architecture that we call our brain is limited in the extent to which it can see into the future and make the best decisions for everybody. We operate thinking that, but that's not how it works. And of course, we can't look to any one individual to solve the problem for everybody. Now, will it be AI? I don't know. That involves a lot of trust in AI. And these large language models are trained in many ways the same way that a neural network, it trains itself up, how a young brain develops and makes sense of the world. So I don't have any immediate solutions. What I do have is a piece of neuroscience knowledge that was at least new to me that most neuroscientists aren't aware of, but I think this is one of the most important discoveries in the last 100 years of neuroscience. It's a collection of studies on an area of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex. Most people have never heard of this brain area, including many neuroscientists. Talk to a neurosurgeon, they know where it is. You talk to a neuroscientist, unless they teach neuroanatomy, which I happen to, most don't know where it is in the brain. And most didn't know what it did because it hadn't been explored. And then a colleague of mine at Stanford School of Medicine named Joe Parvizi did an incredible study where he was doing neurosurgery and stimulating different brain areas as a means to try and find the location where he needed to do the surgery. And he stumbled upon an area called the anterior midcingulate cortex, where if he stimulated with an electrode, people, because they were awake during the neurosurgery, would report feeling as if there was some conflict pressing on them. One even described it as, I feel like I'm driving into a storm, but I feel ready. I can do this. Others reported a different set of words, but the words essentially converged around the same set of subjective experiences, which are, I feel challenged, but I can do it. This kind of forward center of mass. And then other studies, separate laboratories, discovered that people that take on a new practice that's challenging for them, their anterior midcingulate cortex grows in volume. Other people who fail to successfully engage in a regular challenging activity, the anterior midcingulate cortex didn't increase in volume in the same way. So very interesting brain structure. And there's, I would say, about a dozen or so really quality studies in humans, a bunch in animal models, but there are a bunch in humans that point to the anterior midcingulate cortex as a site in the brain associated with the feeling of tenacity and willpower to push through. It's heavily interconnected with the dopamine reward system, heavily connected, frankly, with a lot of different brain areas. It's a hub for a lot of inputs and outputs. So what do we know about the anterior midcingulate cortex? Perhaps most interesting of all is that this is the brain area that seems to preserve its size and even grow in size in what are called superagers. Superagers are people that maintain their cognition later into life. These are people that don't undergo the normal age-related decline in cognition, separate from Alzheimer's type dementia. You know, everybody as they get older develops less working memory, the ability to keep ideas in mind in the short term. Superagers seem to overcome all that. And they live longer. So you could say, well, this is a case of reverse causality. They live longer, so they have a bigger brain area called the anterior midcingulate cortex. We don't really know what the direction of causality is. It could just be correlation. But it all gets ultra interesting when you start to tack together willpower, the taking on of new things, learning things in neuroplasticity and lifespan. And it may be that that quadfecta represents what we think of as the will to live is associated with an intense curiosity and desire to bring in new ideas and modes of thinking. And new ideas and modes of thinking then feed back on our feelings of how we could gain reward, internal reward, of course, dopamine being the universal currency of reward, as a means to move forward. What does this mean? This means that everybody, I believe, can become a better human being by taking on challenges. What is a challenge that can grow the anterior midcingulate cortex? Well, unfortunately, it's a challenge that you don't want to engage in. So if you love running, it's not going to do it. Yeah. If you love resistance training, it's not going to do it. If you don't want to meditate in the morning and you do 5 minutes or 10 minutes of meditation, then you just enhance the activation of your anterior midcingulate cortex. So it's not just about doing hard things, it's about really pushing through resistance. And the reason I bring this up now, as opposed to in a discussion about like how to get more tenacious or have stronger willpower, it will do that. Okay, we know that when the anterior midcingulate cortex gets bigger, it translates to a lot of different areas of challenge, not just the area in which you challenged it. The reason is, I believe that this lofty notion of humans evolving to more collective thinking, to embracing new ways to bridge divides that harm human beings at scale or even just locally, is going to emerge only through the willingness to embrace the internal friction that is hearing things and seeing things that we don't like and being able to take a stance of adaptive response. People always ask me, how cold should the cold plunge be or the cold shower, and how long should I stay in? And it's so variable depending on the person, the time of day. Obviously, only do what's safe, right? So don't go so cold that you can get a cardiovascular effect that's not good. But it's very simple, actually. If you want it to translate into the real world in the best way, you ask yourself right before you get in, on a scale of 1 to 10, how badly do I not want to get in? And I would say that if it's 5 to 10, well, that's a wall. If it's anywhere in the 5, that's one wall you have to get over. So then you get in. And then at some point, there will be the desire to get out. That's the second wall. Maybe it comes within 5 seconds. Maybe it comes within 20 seconds. That's the second wall. So what I would do is count walls. What are the quote unquote walls? The walls are waves of adrenaline being released into your body. And sometimes they are very close together, those waves, and sometimes they're more distantly spaced apart. Now, of course, at some point you go numb and then you don't feel them anymore. We don't suggest that. But if you think to yourself, gosh, today I really don't want to get in, that wall is a really tall wall. Well, just getting in for 15, 20 seconds is going to accomplish something meaningful for this anterior midcingulate cortex. It's going to accomplish something meaningful for the adrenaline release that you're going to experience. So it's less about the temperature. I mean, obviously the temperature plays a role than it is your kind of subjective relationship to the whole thing. For instance, if you do cold exposure at night when you're tired, it's a far and away different experience than in the morning after going for a run and you're too warm. So I can't say 45 degrees Fahrenheit for 90 seconds, although if you want to start there, that's fine, provided it's safe for you. But as you watch these walls of adrenaline come at you, as it were, pay attention to what they feel like. That's what you'll recognize outside the ice bath in a hard conversation.
That's what
It's not that you can make yourself so resilient that your adrenaline system doesn't work.
Correct.
It's that you learn to recognize the state of having adrenaline in your system and staying calm.
Thanks for watching. If you found this information helpful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more health and wellness tips.